So I recently announced that I've accepted a new full-time design position as a graphic and motion designer for The Guard. This past couple months, I've gone through a lot of really interesting job interviews, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in today's video. There were a lot of common questions and responses throughout the process, and I've narrowed down the list to a few key points that I think you should be aware of if you're applying for a design job in or outside of esports. Here are 5 interview tips that helped me get a new full-time design job. Before we get started, one of the most important documents for any job application is your resume. I've gone ahead and provided an exact template of the resume I used in my own interviews. You can find the link to download it in the description below. Now, one of the most common questions I received in all my interviews was based on the idea of working as a team and working individually. The interviewer would ask if I preferred collaborating on projects or if I felt better working on things alone. I think the way this is phrased is that most people will lean towards expressing that they love working as a team because it will be interpreted that you can get along with your coworkers. The way I approach this question is that I focused on showing my strengths on both sides. Even though it's important to show that you work well with others, it was also important that I felt confident tackling projects alone if it was necessary. I gave a few examples of situations where I worked with others on collaborative projects and scenarios where bandwidth was spread pretty thin throughout the company and I had to solo a project on my own. In doing this, I'm letting the interviewer know that I'm flexible in situations, whether it's working with a group or being relied on to handle a single project without the need for support. Another important phase of the interview process is overviewing your portfolio and projects you've worked on in specific detail. Even if you have case studies in your portfolio that describe your work, maybe the objective or the design process, I found that most of my interviewers asked me to expand on these projects further than what was said in the portfolio. Some of these projects were up to a few years old, so when I was asked to describe some of the decisions and the process that went into those design solutions, I found that my memory of that project wasn't as fresh in my mind as I had hoped. I think it's really important that before you get into your interview, you should always look over your projects one by one and refresh your memory on how you would have pitched them back when you made them, especially if you created them a few years ago. My third tip is arguably the most important in this list, and it's based on a very common question I received: what are your values as a designer or as an employee? I think the easiest way for me to describe my advice is to just repeat my response to this question. I would tell the interviewer this: in the gaming industry, I see that there's 2 types of companies: those that use design to pass along information, like promoting their events or highlighting their creators, and then I see companies that use design to build a culture around their brand and create content that builds onto a long-lasting visual identity. Personally, I find the most fulfillment working with the brands that truly value design, which is why I wanted to interview for this position. You have to let them know that you understand the positive impact that design can make for a company and that you want to be a part of that journey with their brand. This is also going to help you weed out the companies that maybe don't value design and can make sure that you land in a position that you'll actually enjoy working in. Tip number 4 is your ability to understand an industry as a whole rather than the specific job you're applying for. So I was searching online for common interview tips just so I could make sure that this video wouldn't be scraping the surface, and one of the most common tips is that people said you should research the job that you're applying for. And while I think this is definitely true, in my experience, if you really want to separate yourself from others, you should also have an understanding of the industry as a whole with the job you're applying for. So I've been in esports for over a decade now, and what I found that put me in a huge advantage over others is that I could describe the pros and cons of these companies' competitors and talk about what they do right or what they do wrong. This is immediately going to boost your value to that company because you now have insight on how they can separate themselves from their competing brands. Your goal in doing this research is to let the interviewer know that you're capable of making decisions that will help the visual identity and growth of the brand. You aren't just being hired to make pretty pictures, you're being hired to build a memorable brand that stands out from its competitors. The 5th tip I wanted to share is very underrated and even more underutilized, and that is your preparation when it comes to asking questions at the end of an interview. In every single one of my conversations, the interviewer would end the discussion by saying, "Before we end this call, do you have any questions for me?" I think that online we focus so much on common job interview questions that we don't focus on what we should be asking them. And in asking questions, you're not only showcasing your interest to learn more about that company, depending on the questions you ask, you can build a connection with that person even if you don't move forward with that job. To sum up my approach, unless it was a concern or later in the process, I didn't focus on pay, benefits, or questions that revolved around if I had this job. The questions I asked were were centered around the work environment of the company, the interviewer's history, how and why they ended up working there, and what their values were as an employee. Even if you need a job to pay your bills, it's also important that you land in a position where you can feel fulfilled and creative. Before you get into your interview, you should ask yourself, what questions will help me understand if I would like working at this job, and start coming up with more questions from there. I have one more bonus tip for those of you that have made it this far, and that is the importance of showing confidence in yourself as a designer. I have an entire video that goes over strategies to feel confident in yourself and your work, so feel free to check that out if it sounds helpful to you. That was 5 interview tips that helped me get a new full-time design job. Let me know if you have ideas for future videos in the comments. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more design tips.